what a weekend. If you are Syrian or a Syrian American, what a weekend. I always look at these convulsions two different ways. First of all, what is actually the news? Well, Assad is gone, and I am not one of those people who worry about who's going to replace him. Assad murdered 500,000 of his own people, more than 12 million Syrians displaced internally or externally, more than 2 million permanently fled the country during the civil war, which began in 2011 and is still going on, as far as I can tell. But Assad finally is gone. And it happened, it had begun to happen on Friday. We were watching the march from the Turkish border to Aleppo, to Hama, to Homs, and then it was going to end up in Damascus. And it did end up in Damascus. And so today we are treated to legacy media telling us the 11-day blitz by Syrian rebels that ended 50 years of Assad rule. That's true. That's in the Wall Street Journal. In the BBC, as Syria's notorious prisons empty, families search for the missing. That's true. Photos show people ransacking Assad's private home. That's true. That happened. How Bashar Assad's regime crumbled. That's in the Financial Times. It's another big story. Over at Fox News, or excuse me, this is from the BBC. From Syrian jihadist leader to rebel politician, how Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani reinvented himself. He's got a different name now. Reports of people trapped in underground at the notorious prison. That's all true. Every bit of it. Also, Israel's moved into a bit of the Syrian side of the Golan Heights to make sure that we don't have jihadis up in the mountains shooting down at Israel. And Hamas and Israel are exchanging names as that deal gets closer. But what don't we see? What is the dog that didn't bark in this story? And it's the same dog that didn't bark in every story forever. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw it coming. Team Biden, Cracker Jack, Tony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Lloyd Austin, the vice president and the president, not one word from anyone that Netanyahu's war, Israel's war against Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran, had significantly weakened the ability of Hezbollah and Iran, and at the same time Russia, to assist their longtime puppet in Syria, the butcher of Damascus, Bashar Assad. And like his father before him, he's just an evil man. He's taken refuge in Russia, and he'll never see the outside of Russia again, or he'll be picked up and immediately dispatched to Syria for trial and execution like Saddam Hussein. The man has got so much blood on his hands and so much torture. And the regime, it's not going to be a violence-free handover to a new group because, A, there are 5 groups, one of which is ISIS. I'm not sure if Jawlani is an al-Qaeda affiliate anymore. He was originally an ISIS affiliate, then he became an al-Qaeda affiliate under the name of al-Nusra. Then he changed it again to HTS, and then he changed his own name. Who knows? I don't know. Syria is full of weapons and different groups. I am reminded of the life of Brian, and I don't mean to make light of the fact that a bloody dictator has fallen. That's good news. But there isn't a coherent group in charge of Syria. I do think the Islamists have control of Damascus, Homs, Hama, Aleppo, but there's a whole bunch of that country that they don't have control of. Turkey's got its own people. The United States is backing the Kurds, as we always do. There's a small group nearer to the Israeli-Jordan border than all the other groups. And, of course, the Russians are still there in their airfield and their naval base. But they've been backing... I don't know how long they get to stay. Seriously, the Russians have been dropping barrel bombs on Syrian civilians for more than a decade. I don't think a new regime is going to simply turn around and say, good on you, why don't we work with you? Iran's out of money, out of people. Hezbollah got blown up by the pagers by 2 months of war with Israel. There's not much left of Hezbollah. They still have some weapons. They're not, I'll talk with Dr. Michael Oren later today, they're not without bite. But the key thing, Syria is for the moment free of a ghastly dictator. People are coming out of jail who you have never expected to see again. People who've been in jail for 40 years are coming out. One guy beat Bashar's brother in fencing, and he went to jail for 50 years because the old man was just as terrible a human being as the kid. There was other news over the weekend. Donald Trump sat down with Kristen Welker at NBC, and while Kristen has begun to figure out, let Donald Trump talk, don't interrupt him. That's what happens when you move from campaign mode at the networks into, oh, we better get an interview with somebody in this town for the next 4 years. They let him talk. And the first thing that Donald Trump said is the most important thing. How will you treat people who did not support you? Cut number one.
I'm going to treat you every bit as well as I have treated the greatest MAGA supporters. There's never been anything like MAGA in the history of this country. These people are so dedicated to making America great again. It's very simple. And I'm going to treat them just the same as I treat MAGA. We're going to treat everybody good. We want success for our country. We want safety for our country. You know, our country's under threat, as you know. We have a tremendous threat militarily because of the power of weapons and weaponry. It's a tremendous threat. Nobody talks about it, but it's a tremendous threat. I want to treat everybody the same. I want to treat them well. And at the end of this 4 years, I have a big head start because I was there for 4 years fairly recently. A lot of bad things were done during the 4 years that I wasn't there, and mostly in what they've done in terms of our reputation overseas. Our reputation is so bad, so shot. I got to bring it back, and I also have to bring back civilization to our country. Our country is a crime pot, and we have to get rid of crime. We have so many things to do. We have to do the prices. We have to do all of that. But we have to get the criminals out of our country. We have to bring down crime. People have to be able to walk across the street and buy a loaf of bread without being shot, and that's going to happen. But what I say to them is, I love you, and we're going to all work together, and we're going to bring it together. And you know what's going to bring it together? Success. I saw that just prior to COVID coming in. I had polls that were the highest anyone. McLaughlin and Fabrizio said George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, if they came back from the dead and they ran as president and vice president, couldn't beat you, sir. We were doing so well. And I was getting along with the left. Let's call it the left. Will be nice. Okay, we're just going to call it. But I was getting along with people that you would consider liberal or progressive, as they like to say, at levels that I never thought was possible. And you know what it was? Success. Success was bringing the country together, and that's what I want to do.
It's a wonderful statement. They didn't interrupt him for 2 minutes, and he was able to say a very upbeat, positive thing, which I believe is his intention. He's not going to get fooled again by the Comeys and the Brennans and the Clappers ambushing him, and they're keeping their distance until they're in charge, and that's good. You know, one thing you can read if you want to know what's coming. Kevin Roberts is the president of the Heritage Foundation. He has a brand new book out called Dawn's Early Light. And the permanent government is in for a shock when they read Dawn's Early Light, because Kevin Roberts, who's very close to Team Trump, has got their number. He's got the number of the international elites, the same old, the Ivy League colleagues, the FBI, the NIH, the Department of Education, the BlackRock, all those folks. Kevin Roberts has your number. He lays out with great specificity what the culture of Washington, D.C. is, why it's got to be drained. It's also got Kevin's backstory in it, which I did not know, and I've met Kevin a few times. And it's very clear-eyed, it's very purpose-driven. If you read Dawn's Early Light, if you give it away for Christmas, you'll be doing everyone a great big favor, because that's the blueprint for the year ahead. Dawn's Early Light. Let me get one more clip in from Donald Trump on Pete Hegseth, cut number 6.
It looks like Pete is doing well now. I mean, people were a little bit concerned. He's a young guy with a tremendous track record, actually. He went to Princeton and went to Harvard. He was a good student at both, but he loves the military, and I think people are starting to see it. So we'll be working on his nomination along with a lot of others.
Since you bring
You see, the Washington gossip machine did not draw any blood from Hegseth over the weekend, and that means if they don't kill you, you're stronger. Pete Hegseth is a lot stronger this Monday than he was last Monday and gaining some momentum as Team Trump rallies behind him and as he continues his ambassadorial greetings to various senators on Capitol Hill this week. I hope you are having a great start to your holiday season. We went to the Scottish Walk, which is the annual parade in Northern Virginia, with a very, very frozen 2-year-old on Saturday. Great fun. 2-year-olds like parades, even if they're really dinky parades. But there's not a dinky parade, it's just rather quaint. I want to go back and finish the thought on what the dog that didn't bark with the collapse of the Assad regime. Nobody saw it coming. What do we have intelligence agencies for? What, really, nobody, everybody thought Iraq had weapons of mass destruction in 2003, every one of the Five Eyes agencies, and 20 years later, nobody tells us that Assad is paper mache. I'm always reminded of the opening page or pages of Alexander Solzhenitsyn's memoir, The Oak and the Calf. There's one line that has always stuck with me. What if it's all paper mache? What if you could poke a stick through it? And I'm remembering that from memory, so maybe it's off a word or two. But Solzhenitsyn was saying in 1976, 13 years before the Berlin Wall fell, what if that edifice of Soviet power is just paper mache? What if you can poke a stick through it? And Assad was not paper mache. He killed 500,000 Syrians. 2 million Syrians went for Europe. 12 million Syrians had to move inside their country. He destroyed the country with the help of Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. It's all broken. It's a terrible police state. But how is it that nobody in the United States intel community told anybody that he could be toppled in about 5 minutes? Why do we not know that? What is wrong with our AI-generated, wonderfully competent intel agencies that they didn't know that Assad would fall over after a year of Israel pummeling Hezbollah in Lebanon and in Syria? They made strike after strike after strike, and Israel was busy yesterday. They blew up the chemical weapons factories. They blew up the rocket factories. The United States made a number of strikes, I think 75 strikes, on ISIS encampments and bases to the towards Iran on the border out there in the middle of nowhere, Syria. Syria, part of it's just one vast desert. And, okay, good. We're blowing them up. That's a good thing. Keep the terrorists in line. We don't know anything about Jelani. But we didn't know anything was going to happen. And you wonder, what do these people do? Do they not? Kamala Harris didn't know anything about this. Joe Biden didn't know anything about this. Donald Trump is not in office. He wouldn't have been receiving a briefing yet. All Donald Trump did was say what needed to be said, which is, we're not getting involved here. This is not our fight. There's going to be a whole bunch of shooting going on, and it's not ours. Good for him. I want to go back, by the way, to Donald Trump on Meet the Press. Very, very quickly, he had this to say about Dreamers, which I've been saying he would say. Cut number 4.
The Dreamers are going to come later, and we have to do something about the Dreamers, because these are people that have been brought here at a very young age, and many of these are middle-aged people now. They don't even speak the language.
So glad to hear him say that. It's a move to the center. Obama won in 2008. He moved to the left. Biden won in 2020. He moved to the left. Donald Trump won in 2016. He tried to move to the right, but Comey, Brennan, and Clapper ambushed him, and the administrative state went after him. Now he's moving to the center again on Dreamers. That's very good. It's great politics. Expand the coalition. Let me tell you what happened on the market over the weekend. Brought to you by American Federal, our friend Nick Rovich and team. Nick Rovich buys and sells precious metals. You can call him at 1-800-261. I want to make sure I get the number right because it's been the weekend. It is 800. I'll find it. 221-7694. I knew I was wrong. 800-221-7694. I talked to Nick last week about the gold market. Gold this morning is at $2,679 an ounce. And like me, he realizes we're waiting to see when the tax bill gets passed. The Dow went up 0.25%, as did the S&P. The Nasdaq went up 0.81% on Friday. Gold this morning, $2,679 an ounce. Gold always keeps pace with inflation. I think we're going to have some more deficit spending coming along. I think gold as an inflation hedge remains a very strong buy. And if you're going to do that, do it with AmericanFederal.com. Call up Nick Grovich and his team, 1-800-221-7694, 1-800-221-7694. The best, most trustworthy guy to deal with in the business, Nick Grovich at American Federal. Vic Mattis is the weekend editor at the Washington Free Beacon, co-host of the Getting Hammered podcast, and Jose Feliciano aficionado, I hope. Are you, in fact, a Jose Feliciano aficionado?
Just one of his many hits, Hugh. I'm sure he has others, but yeah.
There's a greatest hits album out there somewhere. That was a staple of the 70s and the 80s. Vic, I want to do with you, first of all, Merry Christmas. I hope you're having a wonderful Christmas season. Are you getting things organized at the Mattis household?
We are working on it. In fact, as you can see, my background is different. I've been displaced by a tree. So the tree is up. Yes, it's already here. Part of the lights are on. We're just waiting for, then we have a whole thing with the decorating, part of it.
You've already got like 5 Christmas cards there. We're trying to make one. Yeah. We're trying to get one organized.
Yeah, no, our card is not yet ready. We're waiting for those to come in and we can send those out. But, there are those who are prepared and they're already behind us right there.
All right, Vic, I have 2 big questions for you today. Well, you did a review of the Pod Save America postmortem with Mary Catherine on the latest edition of Getting Hammered. I want to go back to that. But first, I have a question. Do you think Karine Jean-Pierre will get a job on air somewhere?
Yeah, assuming that MSNBC is still a network and it hasn't been completely sold off at the moment with Comcast, she might get a show over there, But as you know, the winds are changing, and if in fact it goes up for sale and they're making cuts, I don't know what kind of a deal she will get. Honestly, I obviously can't imagine her on some other network. She could start off on a panel like on CNN or something. I mean,
I used to do panels with Karine during my NBC days, and it never made any sense to me then. But I mean, what do you think you're buying if you buy Karine Jean-Pierre as a talent? What do you think you're getting? Has she lost the ability to be funny and whimsical and in the moment?
Okay, well, Karine Jean-Pierre, let's just say 2.0, right, in her role as a White House press secretary. If you're getting that on your network or on your show, it's really to appeal to a very small segment of listeners who are left, who actually want to be told that everything is going to be all right and everything that they believe for the last 4 years is true. Every time that they change the story, it's okay. We just keep on moving forward. However, if Karine Jean-Pierre decides, you know what, I can't do this anymore, and I'm going to write my tell-all for a lot of money, and I will tell you what I saw from inside, what I saw from the Biden revolution, then yeah, she'll probably appear on a lot of networks.
Would you buy that book? I mean, if you were a publisher, would you buy the Karine Jean-Pierre memoir?
Yes, I mean, yeah, without question, assuming that she's going to give us juicy stuff and not just continue to regurgitate the talking points. I think that
not a chance. I wouldn't buy that on spec in a million years. You'd have to write the whole thing, and I'd have to review it. Okay, so I don't think Karine Jean-Pierre is going to end up with her own show like Jen Psaki, because MSNBC is falling apart. The plane is crashing, and so I don't know that she goes to CNN. Their problem is not that they have too few liberals, leftists or otherwise, apologists for the left. I think she's going to be trouble for anyone who wants. I mean, what happens if you're a shareholder of a company that announces Karine Jean-Pierre joined your board?
Right. Okay. So again, the mood right now is not ideal for Karine Jean-Pierre as she is right now. But again, if she decides to do a tell-all and she says, you know what, I can't take it, and this is really what happened behind the scenes, and Biden, we all knew it. Wow. I
don't think we're going to get that. That brings me to part 2. I listened to you and Mary Catherine talking about the Pod Save America. I listened to part of it, but I couldn't stand it, actually, listening to Tommy Vietor and the gang Pfeiffer, the Pod Bros, the Obama Bros, talking with the, oh, I'm sorry, we were really bad at what we did, except we did a lot with 107 days and $1 billion. And it was Jen O'Malley Dillon, David Plouffe, Quentin Folkers, and Stephanie Cutter. And I've dealt with 3 out of those 4 people, and I don't think any of them gave you any new gave Pod Save America any new information. Did you?
No, I mean that was the disappointing part because they have this golden opportunity either on the one hand for the podcasters to ask, very tough questions, and when they don't answer them, to really get to some, hard, honest facts about the major failures of the Biden-Harris campaign, given everything that they were given. And then on the other hand, it's also very disappointing because, as I mentioned on the show, listening to their postmortem is like John Belushi, at the end of the Blues Brothers, telling Carrie Fisher, my tux was at the cleaners. There was a flood. My car broke down. I had a flat tire. It wasn't my fault because nothing is their fault. They had a small window to work with. Joe Biden
107
quit
days.
Yeah, 107
That
days,
that's the
and
memoir I would buy. I would buy
yeah,
107 Days by Stephanie Cutter, provided that she actually spilled the beans. I
yeah,
mean, the
that's right.
beans, there are a lot of beans to spill, aren't there?
Yeah, that's right. Because you mentioned 107 days, and not to mention the 1.5 billion dollars that they managed to spend, and again, still be $20 million in debt. The amount of money that they had to give to celebrities to help them with their various logistics, their production companies, really, Hugh, was quite impressive. And what they really found themselves in. I mean, this is the thing that they won't talk about is, I mean, they complain about the press handling them, which is funny because Hillary Clinton used to complain and Bill Clinton used to complain all the time about how cruel the media was to them. They feel the same way because they were given a hard time that Kamala Harris wasn't giving any interviews, and then fine, we'll give an interview, and then they give her a hard time for giving it. That's not really the answer. The answer is that she was bad at it, and they were hiding her as long as they could until it became untenable. And then when she
Yeah,
did
how
go,
do you get 50,000 words out of the president was too old, the first lady wouldn't let him retire, and the vice president was a horrible candidate? That's the
yeah,
story of 2024. That's it. The president was too old, the first lady wouldn't let him retire, and the vice president was just the worst candidate we've ever been asked to deal with. It's like a Mission Impossible series ending film where the bomb blows up while Tom Cruise is trying to disassemble it. There are some things you can't get out of, Vic.
yeah, that's right. I mean, and there's stuff that's happening right now. I mean, we want to know where's the president, where's the vice president right now. Even the video that she sent out to supporters, was kind of a hot mess of a video, shall we say?
Oh my
And
gosh.
people wonder about that. So the drama continues. But again, as you mentioned, it was a poorly run campaign, but they had a very difficult uh, product or brand to sell. And I think that was largely the problem. You couldn't hide her. And every time she went on, even if you picked the easiest, the most softball of interviews, she'd whiff. She'd whiff at that. Think about the
She was
people who
just
we
so
owe
bad.
a lot to. Yeah, like The View. I
So
mean, you think
bad.
about that. Yeah,
Now, I want to close by asking you about what I opened the show with. Assad is gone. The
yeah,
civil war is 13 years old. 500,000 people murdered by Assad. 2 million people refugees in Europe. 12 million people internally displaced. Did anyone see it coming? Because I have this theory that our intelligence agencies don't actually do anything. Did anyone say Assad can be knocked over like a bad reindeer on a Christmas display?
No, I mean it's funny. What I do remember, and I think it's a tweet that goes all the way back to 2013, was Donald Trump actually warning people that the Syrian quote freedom fighters are people who want to crash planes into our buildings, and there is some truth to that. I mean, because you have a situation right now that it's much easier to see now that it's over than certainly people were looking at early on in the civil war, which is you have one side that's being supported by Turkey's Erdogan, and those were the rebels. And then you have the regime itself, which is a bloodthirsty regime being supported by Iran and Russia. Jonathan Shanzer from the Foundation Defense Democracy said it was like the movie Alien versus Predator. I mean, who do you pick on that? So it is a difficult situation. And when the Obama administration wanted to get involved, they weighed in by encouraging Putin to help intervene in the civil war, because what they didn't want was a repeat of Libya. And I get that. But certainly having Russia step in, because as we all know, power abhors a vacuum, was a terrible idea. They have these bases there. I know there's a push to get to have Trump talk to whoever the next leader of Syria is and say, "Hey, we can help you. Give us those bases." That might work. I don't know. We'll see. I wouldn't put it past Trump to be able to pull something off like that. But that's clearly a
I
difficult
just want
situation.
people to
And it's revealing of
extrapolate.
Russia and Iran. Yeah.
I just want them to extrapolate. If the entire federal government works as well as our intelligence agencies did in predicting the collapse of Assad, that's what Doge is about. Is that we've got all the nobody knew it was coming. So it's like, what? Huh? A week ago, was anyone talking about Assad falling and then he's gone? And it happens again and again and again. We are always surprised, and I wonder how it is that we make it out of a century of surprise. We've only gone a quarter of it thus far. Vic Mattis, Victorino Mattis on Twitter. Follow him as well. And Mary Catherine Hammett, the wonderful must listen to Getting Hammered podcast. If you don't listen to Getting Hammered, you cannot be happy throughout the week. It is what one takes to be happy throughout the week. Twice a week, Getting Hammered. Thank you, Vic. It's especially beginning to look like Christmas in Bedford, Pennsylvania. I know because I read the latest Selena Zito column. Good morning, Selena. How are you?
Good morning, sunshine. How are you?
I'm great. I read about Bedford, and I've actually never heard of the Omni Bedford Springs Hotel until I read of your column this weekend. But I have to begin at the bottom of your column. It says you are a CNN political analyst. When did that happen?
That has been at the bottom of my bio since 2017, 16, and they've just I don't know why they keep it. I left in 2021.
I thought so. Okay, good. I was wondering. I was going to say, don't go back. That's like rowing towards the Titanic. All right, Selena, I do not know where Bedford is. Do I pass it on the Pennsylvania Turnpike?
You do. I can't believe out of all the stories I've written about Bedford, you don't know about Bedford Springs. Bedford Springs
I
to
don't.
me is the most wonderful place in the entire country. It is an old hotel. Every president since George Washington has stayed there. And now, when he stayed there, it was in a camp outside during the French and Indian War. However, by the 1790s, it had become a resort. At that time, mineral springs were considered healing to people for whatever that ailed them. This one has a total of 9 springs. The hotel is incredibly grand. It has and it sits in the middle of a valley, and it is was completely restored in 2015 to its grandeur. It sat sitting. It just sort of sat there for 20 years after a flood almost completely destroyed it, and no one had the means or the creativity to do something with it. And a former ambassador for George W. Bush, Mark Langford, was convinced to come down and see it. And as soon as he saw it, he fell in love. And it took 2 years to restore this and they had to do it because it was a historic building, completely preserve it the way it was. And it is one of the most beautiful buildings in the country, one of the most
What's
beautiful hotels.
interesting, Selena, I know about the homestead, I know about the Greenbrier, but I don't know about Bedford Springs. Is it the same sort of deal? Just one of these isolated, vast properties full of everything?
Yeah. So the homestead and Bedford Springs are owned both by Omni, and they both have the attention to detail and preservation. And what Bedford Springs does is it brought back the entire community of the town of Bedford. It's located just a little over a mile from the town of Bedford. It's the kind of Main Street that you basically see in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. There's no big franchises there. There's no any franchises there. It's all very small businesses, very, like there's a chocolatier there, there's an Epicurean shop, there's a winery, there's antique shops. It's
And a
very
big
vibrant.
old gingerbread carousel. That's what you wrote about.
Oh, yeah.
I'm interested.
It is amazing. So every year, the Bedford Springs Hotel makes some sort of gingerbread event for people in town and also people that are staying there to see. This year, they really outdid themselves. It's a life-size carousel. You can smell the ginger about 500 yards away or 500 feet away before you even get into the hotel, and it's just absolutely magical. And the whole, they get the staff of the students at the tech school in town to help build it. So the Bedford Springs does an extraordinary job of integrating with the community, and this is just another sort of part of that.
Well, that should be a Today Show opening segment. I'm kind of in the holiday spirit, given that we are now at 15 days from Christmas. So I'm kind of in the holiday spirit and telling people Merry Christmas and go read Selena Zito over at Hot Air, where there is a fabulous column on Bedford Springs. But you don't have to go there. I mean, you can't. Which exit is it on the PA Turnpike, Selena?
It's Bedford.
Okay.
It's the
I when I get on it
not
at
too
Breezewood, I shut my eyes till I get to Ohio and hope it doesn't
right.
snow. That's how I deal with the Pennsylvania Turnpike. But I
It's
loved your
right past
column, and I've been
Breezewood.
okay.
It's
Then
right.
it's very close. I
Yeah,
told
it's
everyone
past.
I would be nice to the Yinzers for this year because they elected Donald Trump, and this year has another 3 weeks to go. So I'm going to be nice, Selena, for 3 more weeks. Not even going to bring up what happened in Pittsburgh yesterday to the Browns. Not even going to talk about it. Wouldn't be prudent. Yeah, we're not going to bring that up. We don't want we don't want to in any way soil the good feelings of Monday morning by bringing up the NFL games of Sunday. Thank you, Selena. Follow her on Twitter at Zito Selena. All things Selena Zito are found at selenazito.com. Get them to change the lower third because you're throwing me off there. I am joined this morning by Alfredo Ortiz. He of the JobCreatorsNetwork.com. Go to Job Creators Network. Have I got that right? Or Alfredo, is it JobCreatorsNetwork.org or JobCreatorsNetwork.com?
.com, Hugh.
.com. I thought so. Whenever I say .com and it's a great organization like JCN, I want to make sure I've got it right. Alfredo, I did a postmortem this morning with Vic Mattis on the Democrats' postmortem on Pod Save America, and it was terrible. They didn't really get to the bottom line. The number one demographic switch in 2024 was that 46% of Latino voters went for Donald Trump. Would you agree with me that that is the single most important data point from the data?
It really is, Hugh, and it's an incredible jump because just 4 years ago it was about 34% or so. So big swing.
So that is what I want to drill down. Why did Donald Trump get 46%? Because I remember the post-mortem in 2008 that was done after President Obama blew out John McCain was that we have to do Hispanic outreach. And it didn't work in 2012, and it didn't work in 2016, sort of worked in 2020, and then it really worked in 2024. What happened?
Well, I think the big thing is that Donald Trump really nailed the messaging. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, we're still talking about winning the hearts and minds of voters, and I think that's what Donald Trump did from day one. And understanding that Hispanic Americans, whether they're Mexican Americans, Cuban Americans, they're Americans first, and then secondly, they're whatever ethnic descent they are. So whenever people ask me, what am I go, I'm an American of Mexican descent. And I think Trump understood that, right? That Hispanics overall across America had the same issues and problems with the Biden economy and the administration that every American had, which was high inflation especially, right? It had issues with border security. I mean, remember that, when that criminality, Hugh, that comes through that porous border, it doesn't land in white picket fence neighborhoods. It actually lands mostly in the communities that Hispanics live in. And it infiltrates their schools, it infiltrates their parks and everything else. And they don't want that, right? They didn't feel safe in their own neighborhoods and communities. And so somebody who understood that, I think, is what they were really looking for. And look, they also represent faith and family, entrepreneurship, everything that Donald Trump really embodied. And frankly, the Democrats just had it completely wrong, focusing on what else? Abortion.
Well, I want to know, what did the Democrats focus on? As I was talking with Vic Mattis, they spent $1.5 billion in 107 days. What was their message on Spanish language radio and television, for example? Did they have a message?
Their message was about abortion, Hugh. I mean, that was pretty much what they focused on. So, for example, in Arizona, they were running nonstop ads targeting Hispanic men with abortion.
And well, how does that? Who thinks that works?
Well, I don't know. Obviously, somebody who spent $1.5 billion and lost the election.
You know, if I'm a Democratic donor, I really have to begin to ask myself, who is in charge of these campaigns? Because if you lose 46% of a demo that you consider to be favorable, part of your base, it's not part of your base. It's up for grabs. And do you expect the transition towards the Republican column to continue?
Well, I hope this is, not just kind of a one-time deal here, because I think these are wins that are sustainable. But the way we did it, at Job Creators Network, we went in early on in the year. We created the Hispanic Vote Coalition, and here we went into the swing states the swing counties within the swing states, right, that had the Hispanic representation the most. And we went in there, and not door knocking, because look, everybody, we do need door knocking. But what really is important is making sure that we're part of that community. So we went in and started talking to Hispanic entrepreneurs, Hispanic pastors, right? It got to the point where the Hispanic pastors were actually talking about the vote from the pulpit. I mean, unheard of, right? But this was what, was very, very important to understand, that this community isn't like other communities from this perspective, right? We have to get in there. We have to do it day in and day out. It's not a one-time thing. It's not 6 weeks before an election. You have to do it day in and day out, year-round. And hopefully this is a sustaining effort that goes, well beyond Donald Trump.
Now, people can go to jobcreatorsnetwork.com if they want to make a year-end gift. They are a sponsor of my show, and it is a wonderful organization to support. I am wondering, Alfredo, there is an inevitable sort of a crash that happens in the motivational enthusiasm of people. And I've been doing this since 1990. It happens after every election, every presidential, every off year. People just kind of walk away from politics for a while. Other times, some people dive in, try and get jobs. What is your assessment of what's going on in the Hispanic community post-election 2024?
Hugh, I think there's a sigh of relief, because especially when we're talking about Hispanic entrepreneurs, which did extremely well under Donald Trump. I mean, if you look at Hispanic households overall, I mean, they increased over $7,000 in median household income during that time frame. I mean, the average American, for example, home ownership amongst Hispanics was the highest it's ever been. And so, under the Biden administration, I mean, inflation really, really was choking that community. I mean, if you really think about who was the hardest hit, it's the blue-collar worker that's working there day in and day out, barely making their checks last from, every 2 weeks. And the Hispanic community was one community that was really, really hit hard with that. And so I think they really believe that Donald Trump can bring down the prices, get a hold of inflation, get a hold of spending, and get our economy back on track.
Were you surprised you carried Nevada? I thought Arizona was in pretty good shape, but Nevada's got the Reid machine. It's a union town. Adam Laxalt lost because he wasn't up on Spanish radio for the last week in the 2022 cycle. What'd you do in Nevada?
Well, it's like what we did in all the other ones with Maricopa County and stuff like that, is that we went in early on, Hugh, almost back in February, March timing, with radio ads almost nonstop. But we really delivered the messaging, I think, that was so critical for Hispanics to hear, which is really, first of all, vote your values. And your values are not about abortion. It's about faith and family and entrepreneurship. It's about finding somebody who actually can address the inflation issues, which are affecting you day in and day out. Right. And this, that messaging that I think we just hit daily in Nevada, for example. And like I said, we also motivated and leveraged the Hispanic pastors and we also motivated Hispanic entrepreneurs, which are really the two most trusted communities, or I would say, people that are trusted within the Hispanic community. And so being able to motivate them and leverage them the way we did, I think was truly critical to win Nevada and quite frankly, the other swing states as well.
Now, what happens now with JCN, Alfredo? What do you do in December and January until the inauguration? Do you rest up? Do you call people? What are you doing?
I wish you. We've been working hard. I mean, as you know, the late great Bernie Marcus passed away just the day before the election. Worked for him for 14 years, a dear mentor, friend, and kind of a father that I never had, right? And so, but now it's up to me to carry the torch and JCN to carry the torch of freedom and entrepreneurship and free enterprise. And so that's what we plan to do. And right now we're working with House leadership to try to make sure we get that Tax Cut and Jobs Act extended, which is so critical. And by the way, we should have Senator Thune on your show, because I don't know what the heck he's thinking about, Hugh, with putting that at the end of 25 or early 26. It seems like we didn't learn anything from our first time go around putting healthcare before tax cuts.
You know, I think that position changed, that they are going to do all one big bill, and I wouldn't be surprised if part of that confusion was over the emphasis on immigration reform, which has been coming out of the transition, which is appropriate. But they can do both at the same time. For American business, they've got to get the tax cuts extended and revised, correct?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was so critical for the success of our country and the economy under the Trump administration. I mean, two main components of the Tax and Jobs Act for small businesses, the 20% tax deduction and the immediate expensing, were huge opportunities for small business people to reinvest in their businesses, whether it's hiring more people, paying more wages, giving them more benefits, or just reinvesting back into, machinery and equipment to make their businesses grow. And so super critical that gets extended. And quite frankly, if we see the corporate rate go down to 15%, which is, I know, what Donald Trump's looking for, I think we need to keep that parity between our pass-throughs and our C-Corps consistent. I would love to see that 20% tax deduction taken to 25%.
Well, all I want them to do is to do it fast. I don't even care about the details. I just want it done in January or February, because businesses are forward-looking and they invest based upon a fixed tax code. And if it's not done, they might even lose the majority by next year. So I think that story got loose, and I don't think it's true. I think they are going to do the tax cuts right out of the box. We will see. Alfredo Ortiz will be putting their feet to the fire on that one, though, I bet. Head over to jobcreatorsnetwork.com, jobcreatorsnetwork.com. Contribute at the year end. They were the most effective get out the vote effort for the Latino community in the United States and the key swing states. And Alfredo, we thank you for doing that. Merry Christmas, America. We are now 15 days away from Christmas. I hope you've begun to panic and you've done nothing, but you're going to get resolved to get in the game today. I want you to start with Angel Tree. Now, we've already taken care of 1,000 children from this audience from 1 week. 1,000 of you stepped up and said, I will take care of a child at Christmas by donating $30. Some of you gave more. Some gave $60, some gave $90. It's $30 per child for Angel Tree to do its magic, which is to connect a prisoner with his or her child via a gift and a note and a youth Bible and a connection to Angel Tree. And you can make that happen for $30. Give a listen to Heather Rice Minus talk about her organization.
These are kids who are without a mom or dad this holiday season, this Christmas, because they're behind bars. And so what an opportunity to step into the role of providing that gift on behalf of their mom and dad, and providing them not only that gift, but a chance to have a Bible in their hands as well. It's the gift in the gospel, and walk alongside them in what is often a very difficult journey to have a loved one who's behind bars.
So it is. Thank you in advance, but I would love to get another 2,000 of you out there across the United States. 450 affiliates. It's only 20 per affiliate. Get going. Please go over to hughhewitt.com, find the banner at the top, and be generous. I also want you to know you can go to besthotgrill.com and get the best Christmas present for anyone in your life, especially a client. Get them the hibachi. They got grills in all sizes, and they've got the try it to buy it. Our friend Rat Rasmussen will provide you with whatever kind of grill you want, from small to big. They're all Solaire infrared burners. They are the best grills in the world. They cook the best steaks in the world, the best beef in the world. They do chicken as well. I suppose you can do salmon on there if you want to be one of those people. But try it before you buy it. But if you're buying a Christmas present for your favorite client, go over to besthotgrill.com and get them the hibachi, the little one, the portable one. They will think of you if you're a Browns fan, you're not going to be going to any more games. But if you're any other kind of a fan, they will think of you no matter where you are. They will think, my client gave me, my favorite lawyer, accountant, financial advisor gave me this Best Hot Grill, and I love them for it because it is the best hot grill available. besthotgrill.com. Go over there, and you will thank me. You will thank me for that suggestion. They also do fire logs, fireballs. They do everything you could possibly need, outside heaters. But go get the grill. Try it before you buy it, besthotgrill.com. The weather is not frightful where Charles C.W. Cook lives. He lives in Florida. It is in Alexandria where it's very cold. I'm joined by Charles and by Andrew McCarthy. He'll be joining us in just a second. Good morning, Charles. Merry Christmas. I'm going to dive right in. You have been talking a lot about reforming the Bureau under Kash Patel, and I am with you. But it seems to me that you want to jettison the counterintelligence function of the Bureau, which I think is essential to America's safety. What's your thought on that?
Well, I don't want America to have no counterintelligence services, of course. I just think that the FBI has proven a less than ideal custodian of them, and I would move them out, and I would return the FBI to what it was supposed to be, which is essentially a federal law enforcement agency, which became necessary as the federal government passed more and more laws and needed to enforce them over state lines.
Now, I am with you. We walked past the Stalinist J. Edgar Hoover building last week, and I'm saying it's going to be emptied out. It might need to be torn down. But generally, I don't know where you would put all that counterintelligence. The only experience I have with the Bureau is a special assistant for two attorney general getting their work product as we followed bad guys around the United States. And there are tens of thousands of them. Where would you put it, Charles?
I think I might try and establish a new organization as a repository for it so that there was a greater wall of separation. I'm not usually either in favor of new agencies or in favor of burning existing things down. I am a conservative. I do like Chesterton's fence. But I just think the FBI over 100 years now has proven itself to be such a problem within our constitutional system that I favor a radical alteration of how it works. So I think I would separate the two out. You need an act of Congress to do that. And I would make the FBI into, as I say, a law enforcement agency. And then I would have a separate organization, probably with better oversight than it has now, that deals with the intelligence collection that it currently is in charge of.
Would the same problem exist, though, which is civilian control of the Bureau? We always talk about civilian control of the Department of Defense. Really, it's now civilian control of the FBI because Christopher Wray has failed to establish it in the eyes of most conservatives. I don't know that anyone could, but at the same time, we are awash. I mean, we've got tens of thousands of Chinese Communist Party agents in the United States. Can we really afford to take a break to reassemble the pieces in a different parking lot?
Well, I don't think it's working now. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of those people would not be fired in the intelligence services. They'd be moved over. But the core problem here, Hugh, in my estimation, is that this institution is just not of great interest to the people who are necessary for its reform. It seems to be of great interest to the American public. I don't normally write about this sort of thing, so the fact that it's of interest to me is telling. But I think we have not seen enough of a groundswell in Congress or enough people within the executive branch who have been willing to reform the FBI now for years and years and years in different political environments under different presidents. So I don't really want to keep the status quo. And I agree with you that you'd have to do it cleverly as not to exacerbate the risk. But the current system is not working either. And to the point to which it's actually deranging our politics. It's deranging the means by which we would fix it. So I would embark on that project happily.
Charles, when you were growing up in England, did you ever have a slinky?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so you know what happens to a slinky? Eventually it becomes so tangled that you can't use it anymore and you have to throw it away. Is that
Exactly.
what we're looking at the Bureau? Something that is
I think
absolutely so tangled that it can't be fixed?
Yeah, and I think that was also true in 1967, which is an indictment. But yeah, that's my view. As I say, I've not really been in favor of abolishing departments on the grounds that they were irredeemable. I want to abolish a lot of departments on the grounds that they shouldn't exist per se. Education, for example, labor, transportation. But this one is irredeemable like the Slinky, and you just need to buy a new one.
Now, I think maybe Andy has joined us now. Andy McCarthy, are you there? Not yet. We're still getting him into the waiting room. Charles, in terms of Kash Patel, are you confident he's the guy to do this?
I understand all of the criticisms of Patel, some of which I share, and I don't like many of the things he said on, say, Steve Bannon's podcast. But if you look at the ideas that he's put forward for reforming the FBI, assuming my sort of abolition or splitting is not going to happen, they're really good. They're correct. And my estimation of this is that the FBI is not as complex a beast as, say, the Department of Justice. And one of the reasons that I didn't want Matt Gaetz at the Department of Justice, other than that I think he was plainly unfit for the job, was I don't think he'd have been able to carry out the reforms that President-elect Trump is talking about. It's a huge institution. You need an Ed Meese who's going to go in there with a great deal of historical understanding and institutional knowledge. But that's not really true at the FBI. The FBI is a glorified police station. It's a badly run and corrupt police station, but it is a police station. And the two or three things that he's mentioned, moving it, changing the way that promotions work, separating out the intelligence, and putting it back to a cops and robbers style organization that goes after sex traffickers and those who are committing serious federal laws across state lines. Those are what we need to do. And I don't really think you need to have some genius level understanding of bureaucracies to start to effect change there as he could.
Now, it's been almost 40 years since I held a clearance or did any of this stuff, but we're joined now by Andy McCarthy, and we're talking with Charles, Andy, about whether or not to shut down counterintelligence at the Bureau. I am against that because the work product that they did 40 years ago is so good and it's so complicated, and sometimes the threat of an investigation, you don't arrest bad guys, you follow them and you track them down. What do you think about counterintelligence at the Bureau?
Well, I'm a long time, I guess long time is relative. I used to be where you are. I thought it was good during the counterterrorism phase after 9/11 to have both the law enforcement and the counterintelligence functions under the same roof. Because I thought they could leverage each other for the threat that we were dealing with. It was helpful to be able to switch as it seemed more advantageous to go after terrorist and criminal cases and to be able to do counterintelligence on them. I've come around to the idea that what I didn't think was going to happen in the mid-90s not only could happen, but did happen, which is that they abused their counterintelligence authority. And I just think the problem is the Bureau after 9/11, the ethos of the Bureau became sort of the antithesis from what Charlie was just describing, which is mainly a law enforcement, law and order, cops and robbers kind of function. And they became an intelligence agency that does law enforcement. And those are very different skill sets. We need them to be a law enforcement agency. If I could design it myself and give it the time that it needed, I would have the FBI be strictly a law enforcement agency and have the counterintelligence function handled by an intelligence agency that doesn't have police authority, with Congress regulating when the intelligence agency was able to throw information over the wall to the FBI. But that's a project that would take probably 4 to 8 years to carry out, and you would have to conceptualize a new agency. So until there's an appetite to do that, I think we have to try to make them better at the counterintelligence function, even though I don't think it's the optimal arrangement.
Let me ask you about this question. If you want to build an airplane while you're flying, it's not going to work. I don't really know that we can accomplish what you both want to do without giving free rein to the thousands of spies, and there are thousands of spies in the United States. Let me start with you, Andy. Is it realistic for Kash Patel to try and set up a new counterintelligence operation, or does he have to accept who he's got and maybe make a few changes at the top?
First of all, Hugh, I must say, having read Cash's book, I don't detect at all that he's looking to do that. He talks about changes to FISA, which I think, by the way, the changes he has in mind would be terrible. And I say that as somebody who wishes him well, but I just think he needs to rethink that. So I don't get the impression that's what he's trying to do. I don't think he can move the Bureau out of Washington without Congress. And I also think they ought to be more modest in what they can get done. We're talking about a one-term president who's going to have 18 to 24 months to do big things. There's not the kind of time or appetite on Capitol Hill for radical change at the Bureau. It's a 4 to 8 year project, and I wish there was time for it, and I wish people who had thought it through carefully could implement what they were thinking through, but I don't see that.
That is where I am, is that you've got to make the best out of this, whatever it is, over on Constitution and I think 7th. Let me close with you, Charles. Would you being realistic, what's the best realistic hope for Kash Patel to accomplish in his tenure?
He goes in, he makes his views plain. There are some fights, they're publicized. He expresses his position, as does President Trump, and he builds some support for the changes we've been discussing that Andy correctly says does not yet exist in Congress. And in the meantime, he changes the culture there to some degree and improves the place over where he left it.
That's well said. And I hope he does that. I don't think we can rip up everything that exists there and not do tremendous damage to the United States of America in the course. Gentlemen, thank you. I'll listen to both of you on The Editors this week. That's the podcast from National Review, the McCarthy Report. And by the way, Charles, thank you for telling me that the Anti-Federalists were against the pardon power. I've been teaching con law for 30 years, and I didn't know that. So my hat is off to you. I did not know that the Anti-Federalists were anti the pardon power. Boy, were they ever right. Thank you both. Before I talk to Bethany Mandel, I want to remind everyone, pharmawindfall.com. It's the closing sprint on Capitol Hill. Everyone's in town trying to get a little bite out of the continuing resolution that will have to pass by December 20th. But Big Pharma doesn't want a little bite. They want a huge bite. They want $30 billion in handouts, and they're calling it delinking. That is destructive of the actual intention, which is a big, vast windfall from the Democratic friends of Big Pharma who are still in charge on the Hill. And I am hopeful that Speaker Johnson just says, no, not now, not ever, never. Chuck Schumer might want to give you $30 billion, Pharma, but we're not going to do that. And the way to make sure that that doesn't happen is to go to pharmawindfall.com right now. Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs are a sponsor of my show. And they know, they come to me because they know I have not been a fan of America's pharmaceutical industry lobbyists since Obamacare. But if you remember back, and I've been doing this long enough, and I don't forget, Big Pharma provided the closing momentum after Senator Kennedy died. They needed people to come on board, and Big Pharma did the big push to get themselves a big payout, and they got a big payout, and Obamacare doesn't work. Healthcare costs have not gone down, they've gone up. The availability of doctors and practitioners has become less and less, and that's all because of Obamacare, and Big Pharma is responsible for Obamacare. So they should not get another windfall. Head over to pharmawindfall.com to make sure that they don't. Don't know if we found Bethany Mandel yet, but in the event that we haven't, we got a bad connection this morning. Let me go over and play for you a little Donald Trump talking to Kristen Welker yesterday about the FBI, since it follows on my conversation with Andrew McCarthy and Charles C.W. Cook. Cut number 2, Donald Trump on the FBI.
Well, I can't say I'm thrilled with him. He invaded my home. I'm suing the country over it. He invaded Mar-a-Lago. I'm very unhappy with the things he's done. And crime is at an all-time high. Migrants are pouring into the country that are from prisons and from mental institutions, as we've discussed.
So I don't think Christopher Wray is
I
going to
can't
keep
say
his job. I'm joined now by Bethany Mandel. She, of course, can be found on X at Bethany Shondark. Good morning to you, Bethany. I have a question for you. Over at X at OSINT Defender, there is a report that according to a number of Israeli media organizations, including Channel 13, Hamas has given Egyptian intelligence a list of hostages they are prepared to release immediately. Do you believe that report?
So I believe that they have sort of gone through the tunnels and talked to all of the other militant groups and gotten lists of who is alive. Are they willing and able to hand them over? I suspect potentially that's possible. I think that there is some fear of a Reagan moment with Trump coming into the White House, and Trump has been very clear publicly and privately that if they don't hand over the hostages by January 20th, there will be hell to pay. And I think that they believe it.
What do we think hell to pay means? I have my own theory, but what do you think it means?
I mean, all of the support via, weapons that America has been holding back from Israel will be the floodgates will be open. And so I think that there's that. I think there's the possibility of further US cooperation with Israel and trying to locate the hostages, 4 of whom are American. 3 of those are still alive. And by the way, on those lists are all the American citizens that are left. And, Hamas has said that the first round will be any men over 65. Keith Siegel is 65. He's an American citizen. But Sagi Dekel-Chen is my age. He's in his late 30s. And there are indications that all of the American hostages are on that first list, which to me indicates that Hamas is scared and they just want to hand over all of the Americans in the first round.
Hamas or Iran? What I think Trump's messaging is directed at is Khamenei and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and that they will not be Team Biden and hold back the Israelis if the Israelis want to come in and finish off the air defense system and the nuclear sites. In other words, if we haven't got the Americans back, it's open season. Hunting season is open for Israel. You think that might be it?
I think it's possible. I mean, I think that the entire Middle East and the entire world understands that they're dealing with a cowboy here. I've been very impressed with all of his picks so far for his cabinet, and they're all people that are also, don't mess around with these people. Elise Stefanik, Marco Rubio, all of these folks have indicated they want to take a really hard line on Iran, and I think that they understand that it's not just talk; it's their entire careers.
Yeah, stand by if you will, Bethany. You got here a little bit late. I want to ask you about the dash of Assad from Damascus to Moscow. He's not coming back. But how in the world it turned out that our intelligence agencies, once again, absolutely dumbfounded by a massive turn of events. Turns out Israel has been weakening Assad even as they've been destroying Hezbollah and Iran's militias. Lots of good news this weekend. Bethany, I began the show by saying, how is it that nobody knew that Assad was a paper tiger, that it had been hollowed out until actually it fell over? I mean, I'm a completely amazed and happy that he's gone, but I read everything. I don't think anyone hinted that Assad was wobbly. Do you?
No, I was hearing reports from Israelis saying, maybe in a few weeks, I don't know, they were hedging their bets. And then I think like 3 days later, that was it. He was gone.
Yeah. There is a opening paragraph on the first page or the first 3 pages of Alexander Solzhenitsyn's memoir, The Oak and the Calf. What if it's all paper mache? What if we can push a stick through it? He was talking about the Soviet Union. He was 13 years early, but I'm just dumbfounded that our intel agencies have no idea that a corrupt regime like Assad's can be toppled by a push. I don't even think there were any gunfights, were there?
Not that I saw. I mean, he basically fled Damascus, and there were some initial reports that there was, maybe the plane crashed, yada, yada. And that was yet another, intelligence failure that people were even thinking that it was all diversion, and he ended up in Moscow, and he will, it was funny. I saw the pictures of him and his wife had a look on her face like, this is very cold, and I did not sign up to spend the rest of my life here, but she did.
And I do not know that Moscow is going to be particularly effective in accessing all the money that he's stolen over the years. What happens now in Syria? You read the Israeli press. What do they think happens? Is it Gilani and the jihadis? Is it the Kurds break off? What happens?
I mean, I think we don't know yet, but there's a reason why Israel is proactively bombing every single chemical weapons depot that they can and getting a preemptive, position at as far into the buffer zone as they can so that they have the best access point. It's because there's fear.
Yeah, and I do not know that they buy that Jelani is a reformed jihadi. It may be that the Syrian civil war has just entered a new phase in which Assad doesn't have a hand to play. He's left the table. The Russians have left the table, but I doubt Iran's going to leave the table in Syria. Do you?
No, they have no reason to. There is a reason why Israel is doing this, and they're hitting all of these places and getting a lot of international flack for it. But they understand that this is the opportunity, and they'd rather be wrong than dead.
Yeah, they cannot let chemical weapons get into the hands of jihadis, no matter how many press releases we get about the reformed nature of Jelani. And I don't know how anyone goes from ISIS to Al Qaeda to Al Nusra to, oh, it's a brand new marketing day. I'm not buying it. Are you?
No, of course not.
Yeah. And so if Israel wants to go in and bomb as much as they want, they're not going to kill civilians. They're not like the Russians with the barrel bombs. They'll be very precise. Last question in terms of the hostage deal. When Israel, the demonstrations have gotten smaller and smaller. What does that tell you about the Israeli public's reaction to Netanyahu right now?
I don't know if it's a response to Netanyahu. I mean, it was interesting in the Eden Alexander video. So Eden Alexander is an American citizen from New Jersey, and they released a hostage video of him about a couple weeks ago. And he was encouraging people to go into the streets and to protest. And you have to keep in mind that that wasn't Eden Alexander speaking. That was Hamas giving him a script to be read. And so that signaled to the Israeli public that Hamas wants them out into the streets. And this is a critical moment. And the Israeli public have to be united because Hamas doesn't want them to be. And so I hope that Israelis heard Eden Alexander's voice reading Hamas's words and thought to themselves, wow, if we go out into the streets en masse, we're playing into Hamas's hands.
We're getting played. We're getting played by the people who are holding our people. And the only way to get the hostages back is for Hamas to lose hope and maybe take the deal to go to Iran because there isn't anything left. I do have to think at this point that Hamas is utterly shattered. What do you think, Bethany?
Yeah, no, I'm hearing from friends who have done their latest round of reserve services in Gaza that it has been different, especially since the killing of Sinwar. They're still, they're still interfacing with Hamas, popping out of tunnels or whatever, but it's far more infrequent, and it's getting to a point where they feel like it's a stalemate.
And a stalemate is good for Israel. It's good for getting the hostages out. It will be good for every resident of Gaza if Hamas takes the deal and leaves. Bethany Mandel, follow her at Bethany Shondark on X. Thank you for joining me. A great holiday season to you, Bethany. I hope it's not too cold over in Maryland because it's freaking cold over in Virginia. Thank you, Bethany. Jim Garrity of National Review and the Washington Post. Jim, did I see you on CNN the other night? Did you? Did you show up at the CNN studios?
The one up in New York, that was the Monday before Thanksgiving. So that was my last appearance on CNN. So
I did glimpse Garrity on CNN then. You've gone over to the dark side.
I did a pretty good appearance, but like when you're on with Scott Jennings, what's the old saying?
Give it up.
If you're an actor, you don't want to appear with a kid, a dog, or Denholm Elliott because you're not going to be, no one's going to be paying attention to you. It's kind of like that with Scott Jennings, who was awesome. I thought I had a pretty good line. Apparently, Elon retweeted it because I'd said, we had a couple of liberal panelists who were very nice, who talked about how dangerous it was that Elon Musk owns a social media platform. And the idea that, remember, there's the rumor going around he could purchase MSNBC. MSNBC by itself is not for sale. It's part of Comcast wanting to spin off a bunch of its cable networks into a separate company. But conceivably, at some point, it could be for sale in the future. And of course, if you're Elon, you could just say, here's a giant pile of money. I want to buy MSNBC. But so I'd said to the other liberal panelists, would you have a problem with Bill Gates owning a television network? And Hugh, I can't see you right. You can see this. I can see your smile now. You have a long enough memory that you know what the MS in MSNBC is for.
Microsoft, yes.
Yeah, it is not for maddening socialists. It is for Microsoft, because it started out as a joint project between Microsoft and NBC News. And it's not that, Bill Gates, if he didn't own it, Microsoft had a considerable chunk of both operational control and influence. It was going to go out over Microsoft network, et cetera. Anyway, Bill Gates has effectively already owned a television network. And the response from everybody else is like, sure, I'd have no problem. Completely oblivious of the fact that, like, no, it's already happened. And I don't remember anybody.
They no longer want networks. They want baseball players. Are you a Yankees or a Mets fan?
I am a very casual Yankee fan, because
then they lost and the Mets won this weekend.
Yeah.
The Juan Soto deal, 15 years, $765 million. Do you think we went into the wrong? Should we have worked on hitting the curve a little bit better, Garrity?
So out of all the sports you could do, I mean, on the one hand, baseball has a very long, season. You have to play 162 games a year, and it can be a grind. On the other hand, you notice a lot of these guys play well into their 30s and 40s. Much less risk of injury, certainly much less risk of concussions. Out of all the sports you could do, that seems like a pretty sweet deal.
Juan Soto, I have never heard of $765 million for an athlete before, but there's always something. Let me bring your attention to, however,
close to $1 billion, and Mahomes was given like shares of ownership in the franchise, and when you're at the top of your game, can you imagine what Jordan would make in today's world?
I can't, and whatever LeBron is times two. Now I want to bring your attention to a sad fact: the New York Jets are 3-10. The Cleveland Browns are 3-10, but the Jets are drafting currently in the Tankathon rankings ahead of the Browns. So could you arrange for the Jets to win one more game? Because I don't think the Browns are going to.
Oh, Hugh, it's one of those things where first of all, I do not gamble on sports, but I do, out of curiosity, because the season for the Jets has been so miserable, I gave myself an imaginary amount of money and said, if I were going to bet money, I would bet a certain amount of money on 6 games. I bet against the Jets. It's the easiest, money I'm going to make the entire week. With the point spread, it gets a little bit tougher. So as the Jets are in overtime yesterday against the Dolphins, the Jets haven't won in Miami in like a decade. They hadn't scored a touchdown in Miami in like 2 years. Hadn't had a passing touchdown in Miami in like 4 years, right? And so I'm like, at this point, I've already had a pretty good day with my betting of imaginary money. And so the question is, do I want to see the Jets win and finally beat Miami for the first time in a couple of years? Or do I want to get a better draft choice and or win more imaginary money? And I found myself rooting for the imaginary money win. That's how bad the season has been. No, I would not bet.
My season is so bad that even though we were playing in Pittsburgh yesterday, where the Browns record was 1-22 in the new stadium going into the game, I couldn't bring myself to watch it because I knew they were going to lose. And they did. They did, in fact, lose badly. And I just want the Jets to lose a couple more. It's not much to add. Win one more game. That's it. They can lose the rest. They can draft 6. I just want them to lose a couple.
I would love to remind you of the time the Jets beat the Browns late in the season, the year they won only 2 games under Adam Gase. But that's the game that would end up costing us Trevor Lawrence by winning those late season games. So,
I want to remind you of the Browns winning in double overtime on Monday night in one of the original Monday night games. I just would want to. You weren't alive then, but that did happen. Let's get to some news. Of all of the Trump appointees, which one won't make it over the goal line? Because I'm beginning to think, now that Matt Gaetz has been offered to the confirmation gods, that everybody else is going to get over the finish line. What do you think?
So middle of the week last week, I would have told you Hegseth's in trouble. And I feel like towards the end of the week, the defiance, at minimum, he's going to get to the hearings. And I think if he does a good job in the hearings, he'll have 50 Republican votes. I next probably would have said Gabbard, Tulsi Gabbard. But you know what, Hugh, we don't have to worry about her passing information to the Assad regime anymore. She had a really great weekend. Not a concern. She can't pass it along if there's no Assad regime anymore. So,
okay, that brings me to my third question, which I asked Andy McCarthy and Charles C.W. Cook. I had a lot of brain power on last hour, and I asked them whether or not the counterintelligence operation to the FBI could be stripped out and sent somewhere else. And it's a pipe dream. It can't be done. Kash Patel can't get that done. Do you agree with me, or do you agree with the effort to get it done?
Counterterrorism or counterintelligence?
Counterintelligence.
So when you,
Jim, you have to talk.
Let's assume you get to catch some foreign spy. Do you want that handled through the law enforcement apparatus, or do you want that handled through the intelligence apparatus?
Right now, we are handling it through the mixture of them at the FBI. If we find a spy, we follow them. We get a warrant through the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and we follow them and we see who they are meeting with that are Americans, and that's our counterintelligence effort. And then once in a while, we'll arrest someone and send them back to China. But we're not doing it very well because there are thousands of the spies in the United States. I just don't think we can expect Kash Patel to get that done in 4 years.
I think that what you're asking for there is a sea change in the entire philosophy of how the U.S. government does this. You could argue about this. Goes back to 9/11 and the stovepiping of information and the question of what look. You have these things that are technically violating U.S. laws, so technically they're a U.S. law enforcement issue, but they're a matter of foreign intelligence, which is always operated by separate rules. It's basically a question of what can you get away with. And that's, the question of like the number of times, interestingly, the Central Intelligence Agency has never called for the death penalty for anyone who's ever been arrested for spying, because their attitude is you never know, a decade from now, 2 decades from now, somebody might just be in a mood to talk. They might want a better deal. They might want better treatment. They might want to, or out of boredom, or they're on their deathbed. And all of a sudden they'll start telling you secrets that you've wanted to know for decades. So it's just kind of interesting. Whereas obviously in the U.S. justice system, sometimes we do want people executed. And so there's just this, like, from the very beginning, and I talk about this in the novels that you never allow me to talk about on your show because you
don't send them to me.
That's what you say.
You never send them to me.
In all of these books, Hugh.
No, you can't plug your books here.
Yes,
you won't send me your books.
They're filled up the screen. So a recurring theme. I have an FBI agent character and other characters who are with CIA, NSA, Department of Defense, and obviously all of them are like, okay, well, we got this guy who's a bet. Let's just kill him. And the FBI agent is always like, who's very kind of Dana Scully. She's like, no. We have we arrest these people. We put them. We have to get information. We have to get evidence that can hold up in court. And the rest of the team just kind of laughs and says, "No, we're going to kill that person."
Yeah. All right, my last question for you, Garrity. We did not see Aleppo. We did not see the fall of Assad coming, even after Aleppo fell. Do you think anyone is at work in the intel community? Have we ever not been surprised by a major development like this?
Yeah, they are. Because here's think about how many times we've seen the Assad regime hold up until now, generally on sheer brutality, right? 336 documented uses of chemical weapons, chlorine, sarin, some stuff they never identified. It's always been it's always this way. You never know what the straw that breaks the camel's back is going to be. And it's very kind of intriguing that with the U.S., this has really been on the back burner. We haven't heard much talk about Syria. Was not an issue in this presidential election. And it's kind of like, when we took we put it on the back burner and didn't pay attention. That is when this guy who the U.S. wants to give you $10 million to arrange a meeting with, is now taken over. By the way, NTS is the bad guys. BTS are the South Korean boy band group. All the listeners out there mixing up their acronyms.
We have no idea who anybody is in Syria other than they're not Assad, and that's okay by me. We will deal. Trouble enough for today. Jim Garrity on X. Follow him. Read him in the Post. Read him at National Review. Do not trust him on the Jets. We are getting close to Christmas. That means we really need your help for Angel Tree. Angel Tree is a ministry of prison fellowship. They connect children with their imprisoned parents at Christmas via a present that the child wants, football, Barbie, you name it. A note from mom or dad about the gift that is being delivered, remembering it's being delivered on Christmas Eve or Christmas by Angel Tree. They get a youth Bible as well. They also get a connection to Angel Tree, which is the most important thing in the deal. The deal is the deal. $30 takes care of a child at Christmas. Can you please make one contribution of $30 so we can get another child off our list? It's a big list. There are a lot of people in jail, in prison, some for short term, some for long term, and many of them have children And your generosity makes Christmas come alive for these kids. I ask it twice a year on behalf of Prison Fellowship in the summer when the Angel Tree camps are open, and at Christmas because Christmas is for children, and Christmas is made merrier if mom or dad or both parents are in jail and they hear from mom or dad via Angel Tree. Thank you in advance for everything you do for them. Let me also remind you, at this time of year, Americans for Prosperity did so much to deliver the election results. Now, my friend Akash Chogali usually joins me, and he'll be back, and we talk about something or other. We really got to stay focused on the budget and reconciliation process, and I know AFP is up on the hill working that, but you ought to join Americans for Prosperity. Just go to americansforprosperity.org. You can volunteer, you can join, you can contribute. It is the country's largest ongoing nonpartisan network of free enterprise, free speech advocates. And they are for markets, 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 markets. Markets work. Freedom works. They are the guys, the gals behind that. When I did rallies in Columbus for Bernie Moreno, in Philadelphia for Dave McCormick, Americans for Prosperity organized them, along with our Salem affiliates, and we had great turnouts. They were packed to the big venues, packed out, because AFP knows what they're doing, and they have an organization in place. You don't have to invent anything. You don't have to go and join a brand new startup, a 501c3. You don't have to get tax deductibility. They've already got that at Americans for Prosperity. All you have to do is go to Americans for Prosperity and join. AmericansForProsperity.org. Let me also hold up Turning Small Talk into Big Talk. This is the best stocking stuffer book out there. Turning Small Talk into Big Talk is by Jan Genera. If you go to jansbooks.com, you can order it there, or you can order, you just remember Jan Genera and go to Amazon. You can find Turning Small Talk into Big Talk, the perfect stocking stuffer, and you can use it at Christmas dinner. Now, I bring that up only as my way of transitioning to the wild adventure. The best Christmas gift that you can give to a young man between the ages of 21 and 35 is the wild adventure. They go spend a week fly fishing in Montana with 11 other young guys and leadership. They have a wonderful time, wonderful food, wonderful fishing of the lake, Rainbow Lake and the Madison. They get out, they get it done, and they have a great time. And I could play for you testimonial after testimonial. What you need to hear is me tell you that they're going to run out of spots by the time you move. If you want to give a Christmas present that someone's going to say, what is this? The answer is you're going to Montana, and you show them the website, twa.us. Okay, how can you not want to go to Montana? These are normal people, and your brother's going with you, or your brother is sending you, or mom wants you to do this, or dad wants you to do this, or your friends want you to go with them. You can, by the way, take yourself and your best buddy. If you want to go to twa.us, which is a great idea. I've always gone with friends. Dwayne's gone with friends. twa.us. They've got a waiting list for guys over the age of 35 who want to do the original Wild Adventure, but it's a long waiting list. Doesn't hurt to get on it, but it's a long waiting list. Joined from Israel by Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, former member in the Netanyahu government past. Good morning, Dr. Oren. I would like you to update us on what you think is happening in Syria right now.
What's happening in Syria is the beginning of a new era in the Middle East, Hugh, a new era. We don't know who's going to take charge there. And you and I are both old enough to remember the Lawrence of Arabia movie, probably very politically incorrect today. But you remember when the rebels took over in Damascus and they started yelling and shooting at one another in the room? Somehow that got that image in my head, Hugh. You know, guys shooting pistols in the ceilings. And saying we don't carry water, we don't cut wood. I don't know, all these things that are politically incorrect in my mind. I apologize, but I don't care if Jihad Joe takes over Syria. Anything's better than Assad.
Well, that was my view. My view is Assad killed 500,000 of his own people, drove 2 million into exile, displaced 12 million internally. And I've got Leland Vittert is a friend of mine, but he's saying Assad was a despot. Not sure this is a better option. They've got a video of some jihadi saying they're going to Jerusalem next. I'm not sure that they really talk to me.
Hezbollah withers on the vine. That's what happens. Hezbollah can't be resupplied from Iran anymore. via Syria. The Shiite arc that extended, the crescent that extended from Tehran to the Mediterranean has just collapsed. Has just collapsed. And by the way, I think there's a good chance there'll be an outbreak of civil war in Lebanon now, as the Druze and the Christians who hate Hezbollah are going to start picking them off one by one. Watch it happen. And if we can interdict the chemical weapons, the United States can take care of ISIS. We wish these guys all the best. The idea is they hate Iran, and Iran is isolated. But we have one major worry now, and it's not Syria. Our major worry now is that the Iranian regime is going to break out and create a nuclear weapon, and because they know.
Now we're also old enough to remember the 1973 war, and that Syria sent tank division after tank division up the Golan Heights and almost broke through. What happened to that army? What happened to those tanks?
It's gone. Melted away. Hey, it's the same thing that happened to the Afghan army, when America pulled out. Things happen very, very rapidly here. But I want to caution you about this idea of that the Iranian regime may conclude that this is their last opportunity to create a nuclear weapon. They're backed into a corner. They're isolated. I want to suggest something that's going to be very radical here, so brace yourself. Iran has flagrantly violated all of its commitments, both to the JCPOA as well as to the international community. It is enriching uranium at 60+%. It has enough enriched uranium for 4 bombs. Maybe Israel and the United States should act preemptively, and not wait for Iran to break out.
Well, that is the only way that Joe Biden actually gets a win on his scorecard, Ambassador Warren. There's nothing on the Biden scorecard. Nothing.
He goes down in history. He's been claiming, victory, that he's responsible for what happened in Syria. I can't say he has no responsibility. I think the major responsibility lies with Israel, and the fact that we fought a brutal war for 14 months that isolated Iran and destroyed its proxies. I think that's what did it. And sometimes in the opposition to the Biden administration, I think the Ukraine situation also contributed. But at the end of the day, there were only 5,000 Russian soldiers in Syria. There was a huge army there. It was really the breakdown of Hezbollah in Iran. But I think we have to think very, very clearly, soberly about the nuclear situation in Iran, Hugh, and whether the United States and Israel have to act now before it's too late.
I asked Bethany Mandel last hour, I want to ask you, the Israeli media is full of reports of an imminent deal for hostages, which would make sense to me if, in fact, Iran's axis of resistance is in full collapse and the remaining Hamas terrorists realize they got one chance to get a ticket out of Gaza. Is that what's happening?
I would hope so. All we can say is hope so, because we don't know exactly who's pulling the strings on the Hamas side. We don't know if Hamas knows where all the hostages are. Some of them may be in the hands of other organizations or in the hands of individual families. It's happened in the past. We know. We can only hope. And I think, yes, the fall of Assad, the isolation of Iran, the withering on the vine of Hezbollah all contribute to putting more pressure on Hamas to release the hostages.
All right, now the next question, Michael, there are only 2 people in Israel that I can ask this of, you and Haviv Redigur. You both know Netanyahu well. You followed him well. You were in his government at one point. You were his ambassador at one point. Haviv follows him from the outside. And you're not overwhelmed by Netanyahu derangement syndrome, which really exists in Israeli media. They cannot not talk badly about Netanyahu. Ask them about anything, and they'll end up talking about Netanyahu. Does Netanyahu get credit from the Israeli people for the 14 months of hammering that he has unleashed on all of Iran's proxies?
It definitely does. He definitely does, and his numbers have been going up in the polls. I don't know how he'd fail in an open election. He's also testifying in his own corruption trial. That's a sort of a counter image. But what the polls show are very interesting, always, that a majority of Israelis would like to see Netanyahu go at this point, but the same majority of Israelis really can't find anybody who could replace him. And they still think he is the person who's most qualified to be prime minister of Israel. And we got to ask ourselves, okay, October 7th was a failure of colossal, monumental proportions, and there are many issues you can take with Netanyahu about the way he runs his government, the way his interpersonal relationships, certainly. But the fact of the matter is, this man has withstood pressures that I don't think any other human being on earth could withstand over the course of the last 14 months. including immense pressures from our ally, the United States, from the international community. He's got arrest warrants out. You know, he can't visit Belgium or Canada or Great Britain. And he doesn't seem to miss a step. You know, he's not that much younger, by the way, than President Biden. You were showing a picture of him snoozing there, and yet you never see Netanyahu tired.
Let me ask you this: when Netanyahu goes on trial, will the Supreme Court step in to say, you know, maybe this is an important period of time in Israel's history with Syria up for grabs and Hezbollah reeling? Maybe we ought to postpone the trial, because it does seem to me crazy, absolutely crazy, that he's going on trial this week.
And, well, the Supreme Court already ruled that he has to go on trial, irrespective of the fighting in the South, the continuing fighting in the South, the ceasefire in the North. Maybe the situation in the North, if it deteriorates in one way or another, will lead the Supreme Court to revisit its earlier ruling.
It strikes me as insane. Let me ask you my last Netanyahu question, which is somewhat radical. For the last year and a half, I believe Netanyahu has been the de facto leader of the West. Olaf Scholz is finished. Trudeau is finished. Keir Starmer doesn't know which way the men's room is. We do not have any idea what Joe Biden is doing on any given time, and we don't know if Blinken or Sullivan speaks for him. Japan has been up in an upheaval. Am I right? Netanyahu has been really the only adult on the global stage on our side?
Yeah, I think Netanyahu has been maybe the only leader in the West who understands what this war is about, that this war is a war for the West. And as I'll quote a great writer, Sam Harris, who said, "We're all Israelis now, just not all of us know it yet." And I think that remark was made, that line was given way back in 2023, and it remains emphatically true today. And yes, Netanyahu has led that effort, and in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, both diplomatic, logistic, you know, the shortage of ammunition. An interesting article in the Israeli paper last week that shows how Israeli emissaries have been scrounging the world, trying to find army surplus munitions and paying, you know, double the price for all of them. You know, it's like you're back in 1948. So this is what Israel had to do in order to win the battle for the West, a battle in which very few international leaders appreciate the role that Israel and, frankly, Netanyahu have played.
And do you think that changes on January 21st? You think the pipeline of weapons opens up again?
I hope so, and I hope there are weapons. There's a world shortage of weapons, but I do hope so.
Okay, now let me close by asking you about Mike Huckabee and the relationship of our ambassador to Israel. You've done the opposite. You've been Israel's ambassador to the United States. How much does our ambassador to Israel matter?
Depends on his relationship with the president. David Friedman, who was very close to the president, and he was the previous ambassador from the Trump administration, was very close and had tremendous influence. I do not know the personal relationship between Mike Huckabee and the president. All I know in general, an ambassador does not make policy. An ambassador carries out policy, but the ambassador could influence depending on the relationship. I always felt that I could go back to Prime Minister Netanyahu and make my case and often get him to change his mind by making a compelling case. You can do that.
Bonus question from a headline that crossed my desk. The Israelis have moved into an area they had not previously occupied in the Golan Heights. What is the significance of that?
It was an area that was negotiated by Henry Kissinger with Golda Meir in January 1974 to create sort of a buffer zone between Israel and Syria. It was an area that had been captured by Israel in 1967. When I was a young man on a kibbutz on the Golan Heights, I used to drive a Jeep on the weekend around the Quneitra, the third largest city in Syria, which was completely abandoned, a ghost city. We had to give that back in 1974 in order to get the buffer zone, a ceasefire. Now Israel has reoccupied that zone, and most importantly, has reoccupied the Syrian summit of of Mount Hermon, and that's the highest point that overlooks Damascus. So it's a position of great strategic importance, and our commandos reoccupied it yesterday.
And has any intention been revealed to stay there for as long as the chaos continues in Syria?
Well, that area was negotiated. That agreement was negotiated with the Assad government. You know, the father of Bashar al-Assad, Hafez al-Assad. The Assad governments don't exist anymore. So under international law, you made an agreement with a country, in essence, the government that does not exist anymore. So we do not have that agreement has no legal force as far as I know.
Okay. But Israel did annex the Golan Heights, correct? But they didn't annex this part of it?
They did not annex this part of it. Yes, in October 1981, Begin annexed the Golan Heights, and then in 2019, President Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Unfortunately, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal still refer to the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. They have their own
That's
foreign
remarkable.
policy.
They do, and it's often wrong, and they were caught by surprise, like America's intelligence agencies again. Dr. Warren, thank you for joining me early this week. We did want to get it up to the date. You do too. I hope it's a day of celebration in Israel because Iran is collapsing in real time before our eyes. Some of you are panicked. Christmas is almost upon us. You do not know what to get for your mother or your father or your sister or your brother. Here is my double-barreled suggestion. Go look up Heath Hardage Lee. Heath Hardage Lee. Her brand new book is The Mysterious Mrs. Nixon. Her first book is The League of Wives. Both are excellent. She joins me now. Hello, Heath. Welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show. It's good to see you.
Hi, Hugh. Thanks so much for having me again.
Now, let's talk about first The League of Wives so that people will understand how you came to write about Pat Nixon. Would you give them the brief précis on The League of Wives and why that continues to sell and sell and sell?
Yes, that book has been very popular. So that book is about the courageous wives of American POWs and MIAs during the Vietnam War and the fight these women have with not only the North Vietnamese communists to get their husbands home, but the government of the US under Lyndon Johnson. It's only under President Nixon that these women finally get the support they need to bring their husbands home. So it is all about that fight and how courageous these military wives are.
I believe you were at the dedication of the memorial to them in Coronado. I think my daughter ran into you there. Certainly the last time I saw you, though, was at the Nixon Library when you were hard at work on The Mysterious Mrs. Nixon, your brand new bestseller that the fetching Mrs. Hewitt just inhaled. Now, I got to tell you, there's new stuff in here for me. I did not know that the library staff and all of us had missed the collection of Pat and Dick letters from the war years. How did you find out about those?
Yes, those letters, Hugh, are incredible. And it changes, I think, the media perception of the Nixon marriage that has been for years, this loveless marriage. So untrue. President Nixon is smitten with Pat, like just devoted to her and she to him. But those letters, which Tricia and Julie, the Nixon daughters, kindly allowed me to see, these new letters, show us this whole side of Richard Nixon, the smitten schoolboy almost. He just loves Pat, adores her. And she puts him off for a while. They meet, and he says within one meeting, he's going to marry her. She thinks he's nuts. And she makes him work pretty hard to win her hand. So I think those letters are such a window into that relationship. And they also go on during World War II. And they're just very passionate, it shows the couple as a very close-knit, very supportive couple of each other and each other's goals as well.
Heath, do you feel as a biographer that you're working on something that's going to be missing for future historians, the written word? Letters don't exist anymore. It's all email. And I don't know that there's ever going to be a trove of letters like that available to a new biographer like you. Does that ever cross your mind that this whole business is changing?
Oh, completely, Hugh. We all worry about that, plus AI, taking over. But I don't think, AI is never going to take over what a human can do. The interpretation of emotions, that can only do basic facts, put it together. So I don't think AI is going to replace us. But your point about letters, yes, things like this, it's going to be difficult going forward. However, there are so many lives in the past to be discovered, and they are all, or if you're lucky, like I was, there are wonderful places like the Nixon Library that have these archives full of these documents, which we would now maybe call artifacts. They are artifacts of a different age. So I still think there are so many subjects of the past that are going to have documents and letters. As a biographer, I doubt in my lifetime I'm going to run out of those subjects.
Now, I am not a neutral person when it comes to Mrs. Nixon. She was very nice to me when I was very young and in San Clemente, making sure that the kid who just arrived had a place to go for Thanksgiving and that kind of thing. So I've always had the highest esteem for her. I am really surprised, I'm still surprised, that the Nixon daughters said, "Come on in, Heath Hardage Lee." Was that because of the wives' book?
Well, that is a good point, and I would not have blamed Julie and Tricia if they never wanted to talk to anyone from the journalism world again after the treatment they've all had over the years from the media. I think my book, The League of Wives, because I found in that book, and I try to not take sides in my book. I'm a very unbiased biographer, but you've got to write what you find. And in The League of Wives, I found that Lyndon Johnson was guilty of not helping the POW wives, of being obstructive, of not caring about the POW MI contingent at all, or the women trying to get them out, while President Nixon, while the women had gone public on their own about the problem, he gave them support, he gave them a bigger platform. And let's not forget, he ended the Vietnam War.
If you're watching on YouTube, this is the book, The Mysterious Mrs. Nixon. The one person of all people who ought to read it, Heath, is Usha Vance, because she's 38 years old. She's just about to become the second lady of the United States. Same, Mrs. Nixon was 41 when she became the second lady of the United States. She had young children, like Mrs. Vance have young children. Do you think there are lessons there for her?
Oh, absolutely. That's such a good call. She definitely should read it. Yes, and I think in both cases, these women are very committed to their families, and they're going to both be pulled different ways. There's the political life and the family life, and that's one of the central conflicts, I think, in Mrs. Nixon's life, is leaving her two little girls to go on the campaign trail, to travel globally around the world, to do her patriotic duty as second lady. So I think there are lessons there in that work-life balance, as we would call it now, and also in diplomacy and how you must have this global embrace of other countries. So I think Mrs. Vance would do well to read the book.
Yeah, the 1953 trip that Ike sends a young Richard Nixon on, he also sends a young Mrs. Nixon on. They can't take the girls with them, obviously. Did you find it amazing that she made it through, I don't know, 21 countries in 53 days on 4 dresses?
Oh my goodness, yes. And the packing alone, her suitcase is so tiny, which they have at the Nixon Museum. I cannot imagine I would ever be able to do that, but she was very efficient. She was so prepared. The staff would go to her for advice, information, because she read every word of the State Department briefing books. Amazing. She was an amazing diplomat. And President Eisenhower, I call in the book the talent scout, who finds Mrs. Nixon, who sees how good she is with diplomacy, and tells Richard Nixon, quote, "Take Pat on all these global trips they go on."
Now, she does. There's an extraordinary part of the Nixon Library where the trips of Mrs. Nixon are recounted. She went everywhere, and when she went somewhere, she didn't go to the state dinners. She went to the schools, the orphanages, the poorest of the poor. It was sort of a departure from first ladies prior and a bridge to first ladies thereafter. Is that your conclusion?
Oh, absolutely. She only wanted to be where she would be useful. And I think that's one of the key words with her, is being useful. And also, she said after that 1953 trip we just talked about, everywhere I went, it helped women. Her goal was to lift up women and children, which, by the way, is also Mrs. Trump, one of her big initiatives. That is what they both want to do. And I think Mrs. Trump should definitely read this book too and take a page there, because everywhere Mrs. Nixon went and throughout her career as second lady and first lady, she was very progressive on women's issues, and people don't give her credit for that.
I also like to point out Richard Nixon is the only American who's been on 5 national tickets besides FDR, but that forgets that Eleanor Roosevelt and Pat Nixon were also on 5 national tickets, and that meant that they had to do 5 presidential campaigns. I can't imagine doing one, Heath. Can you? I mean, it's just such a grind.
It's so grueling. And I will tell you, Hugh, during this book, I kept saying, you start talking to the people in your book. And I said, Mrs. Nixon, please take a nap. I mean, I was worried about her. She, it's such a grueling process. As you said, 5 of these. But another one of her famous quotes is, I do or die. I never cancel. And she never did. Such an amazing person with her stamina, her energy, and just her fortitude too in the face of all these political battles her husband went through.
She's also the original mover of the letter that Richard Nixon sent to Donald Trump, because it was Mrs. Nixon who saw Donald Trump on the Donahue show and told RN he's going to be president. It was a letter we had on display at the library for a long time, probably be back out during the second Trump term. Let me finish this way, Heath. You spend years writing a biography. What is the most surprising thing that you learned about Mrs. Nixon?
Well, Mrs. Nixon, the most surprising thing after 4 years of working on her, because that is the least she deserves, to see everything, to learn everything about her. I think the most important thing I learned about her is she is the opposite of how the media portrayed her. They portrayed her as mysterious, aloof, not interested in politics or any of this. This is simply not true. She was warm. She was one of our hardest working first ladies, I think, a global diplomat, progressive on women, supportive of her husband throughout. So she gets so little credit for what she did also in the White House to bring in more art and objects than any first lady before or since. There's so many things about her.
You just reminded me. One of the things I learned is I did not know that the look of the White House today owes so much to her work with Conger and the Williamsburg Foundation. I didn't know any of that.
Absolutely. We always think about Mrs. Kennedy, who did a wonderful thing by starting this, but Mrs. Nixon is the one who did the most, and the look today is all the Nixon era.
So let me close with this, Heath. How is the book selling in a Christmas season where people need to find a Christmas? It's the perfect present for young women, middle-aged women, old women, and anyone who likes American history, because you get a different view of RN and his pivotal presidency by seeing it through the prism of Mrs. Nixon.
Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate the kind words. And of course it is selling, but it can always sell better. So Christmas is the perfect time to purchase this. And I think also in the lead up to the inauguration of our new president, this is the perfect book for people to read who want to learn about first ladies and their role, and how important this role is, and how to do this with grace and poise, as Mrs. Nixon shows us.
And I want to point out to people, Amazon will usually give you a discount if you buy 2 books. And Heath Lee's first book, The League of Wives, deserves to be on every shelf, because it's about what it's like to be a military spouse. Perhaps the best book ever written about being a military spouse is The League of Wives, and The Mysterious Mrs. Nixon, now on the bookshelf. What do you turn to next, Heath?
Wow. Well, that is a great question. I am hoping to do Tom Wolfe's biography next, the great writer, the man in the white suit, who I enjoy sort of his cloaked conservatism, which you don't really notice with that white suit, but he is a closet conservative.
The Bonfire of the Vanities, one of the most significant books of the last century, and the characters in that book, especially the Irish-American defense lawyer who explains the favor bank, I still tell people about that. That would be quite a daunting task, Heath. I mean,
Oh,
how much that would be overwhelming.
It's a lot. Well, I'm a native Richmonder. I've interviewed Mr. Wolf several times. He's also from Richmond, so it is overwhelming. But Hugh, all these books are overwhelming when you start. So you just have to do one document at a time, one interview at a time, and give yourself 4 years. That's how I
Where do
take.
you find the Wolf papers? Where are they collected?
They're actually all in New York at the New York Public Library. So, I'm hoping if I can get the family on board, because I always like to have the family involved, I would spend a lot of time in New York. Yale has a lot of his papers also, and Washington and Lee, which is right down the road from where I live. So, I think it's a possible thing. We'll see. We'll have to see if everyone is on board with this. I'm working on it.
Well, back to the immediate. The Mysterious Mrs. Nixon is available in bookstores now. It's at Amazon.com. It is the perfect Christmas present. And get the League of Wives at the same time. Heath Hardage Lee, thank you for joining me. You have a very wonderful Christmas.
You too, Hugh. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
You bet.